Welcome. I hope you can hear me. I think I hear myself.
It's good.
Welcome to something I'm so very proud to be, that we are hosting here at Plymouth Church. The Power of Redemption and Interfaith Conversation. I am DeWayne Davis, lead minister of Plymouth Congregational Church, and I am so pleased not only to welcome you here to this conversation, but also my colleagues. I am so excited. I think this may very well be the first event that I am hosting with my colleagues in the downtown clergy. So if I seem a little giddy, it's because I am excited and I do want to impress them so I do hope this conversation goes very well. For those who are watching us via webinar, welcome to this conversation. You will have an opportunity in the question and answer section to pose questions. And when we get to the question period for the audience, we will also be careful to come to the live stream part of it and get questions from you. When we learned that Ramadan, Passover, and Easter season were all converging at the same time, I think it was Rabbi Zimmerman who said, "We've got to do something." And immediately the response was, "Yes, let's. What can we do?" And I don't remember that any one person had the idea, but I think the one thing we did want to do is to bring us all together for some kind of conversation, and then we continue to refine that idea and came up with this topic, something that I think is relevant not only to each of our traditions, but is relevant to what we are experiencing as a nation and as a global community, the doctrine or idea or philosophy behind redemption. And so we're going to get started right away. I had thought that I would introduce each of them, but I want each of them to come to you so that you can hear their voice, because this is a conversation and I want you to be comfortable and enjoy it. And we're going to, in this effort, not only in an interfaith dialogue, but so that we can, in this moment, in this program, we may model what it means to be beloved community, but that it might inspire us for more conversation, because we know that there are going to be disagreements down the line somewhere. But it's important that when those disagreements occur, we will know that we have partners in the conversation. And I think we can start that tonight. And so we're going to go in line. Please introduce yourselves and let us know where you're coming from so we can get right to the conversation and no one will have to guess who you are.
Perfect. My name's Rabbi Marcia Zimmerman. I'm the senior rabbi at Temple Israel in Minneapolis, right down the street. And I'm coming from Judaism. How about that? Is that what you want to know? Yes. Good.
Reverend Dr. David Breeden, I'm the senior minister at First Unitarian Society. I know that it's very confusing because there's several Unitarian Universalist congregations around. We are the humanist one right behind the Walker. I say that because I then represent secularism in some ways, as I will discuss tonight. You may not know that First Unitarian Society right here in Minneapolis was the first congregational humanist congregation in the nation. Wow. And we're still the largest one from 1916. So be proud of the multi-faith aspect for a long time here in the Twin Cities.
I didn't know that.
I'm Reverend Dr. Lori Poundfell. I'm the senior pastor at First Christian Church Disciples of Christ here in Minneapolis. And I have the task of coming to you on behalf of Christianity. Pick your strain.
A simple task. A simple task.
I am Hamdi Al-Sawaf, psychotherapist and counselor. You hear
Yeah.
me?
Cody is, yeah. Oh.
I don't think it's on.
You hear me now? No?
Here.
Oh, thank you, Rabbi. Thank you.
Oh, it's working.
Now try it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it is.
There you go.
Hamdi El Sawaf, now you hear me. By profession, psychotherapist and counselor, and I'm the president of the board of the Islamic Community Center of Minnesota, and also the imam or the spiritual leader of Masjid Al-Iman Mosque of Faith.
Well, see, now I think we are ready. That is a great list of people. Let's give them a round of applause for coming.
We can introduce ourselves.
I wouldn't applaud yet.
Yeah.
I don't, we haven't, you know.
So one of the things that we wanted to talk about that kept coming up, and I think in some ways it probably is the best topic to really see where the convergence is, but also where the differences are. But it's, I think, a concept that I think we all can agree. Redemption. Redemption is a concept in so many religious faiths. I was even looking at how the Buddhists think about redemption, and they do think about it. And so it's a concept that is in so many traditions, and each tradition has their own set of stories, their own texts. They have their theological and spiritual theories and practices around it. They have practices and observances and rituals, all of it addressing some sense of divine deliverance, liberation, or salvation. And I think that's a starting point for this conversation. How is redemption understood in your respective traditions? What does redemption mean in your religious cosmology, your religious rendering of how the world works?
Well, so Judaism is all about redemption and liberation. That is who we are. In Genesis, we are families, right? We have Abraham and we have Sarah, we have Rebecca and we have Isaac and we have Jacob, Rachel, and Leah. We're families, so we become connected through a particular family. But it's not until we find our way down to Egypt where we become a people. Of course, the 12 tribes and Jacob, Rachel, Leah, and Bilhah and Zilpah, they all give us the 12 tribes. But it's not until we move into Egypt, and of course then there is a Pharaoh who knew not Joseph, and then enslaves the Israelite Hebrew people. And so the redemption comes from a baby Moses. Probably don't have to tell you all these stories. You know all these stories. Who then grows up in Pharaoh's court, found by Pharaoh's daughter, is saved, nurtured and nursed by his own mother, who is the nursemaid, of course, hired by Pharaoh's daughter, Batya, and then comes and realizes that these slaves are being beaten. He kills an Egyptian and leaves because of fear of his life. God tells him, no, Moses, those are your people. Get back there, take them out. Redemption, liberation. And so Passover is the place that we talk about it. We tell this story every single year. It doesn't matter how much Torah you know, it doesn't matter what scholarship you have to tell the story of the Exodus from Egypt, no matter how knowledgeable you are, every year, and act it out. Act it out. Some way, or that's why we eat matzah. That's why we act out the redemption, the liberation, never forgetting that we were slaves, never cutting that out of the story. and that redemption and liberation is the answer. It is the seminal story of our peoplehood. We didn't become a people until the liberation from Egypt. Then we get Torah. Then we become a people, and that's who we are even to this day. So redemption is the center part of who we are as a people, and that is Judaism. We're a people, we're a religion, we're a culture, we're an ethnicity. We have all of these things all combined as one. So I'm going to stop there. I could talk about it for a long time, but I think that's good enough.
Wow, okay.
Have at it.
I'm going to take a little bit of the Christian pressure off of you.
Okay, good.
I'm a Unitarian Universalist humanist. So to break that down a little bit, Universalists that's an American movement. There were some in Great Britain during the Revolutionary period, but mostly it's a US thing. And Universalists say everyone goes to heaven. It's universal salvation. So some of them thought, well, maybe you need to go to hell a little while and get a little of the, a little bit of that slag burned off you. But actually, everyone goes to heaven in the end. And so that's part of it. And so you can see that redemption didn't play a huge part because you're already redeemed, period. And that was the Universalist message. And it still is to this day for those who are actually Universalists, but there aren't that many. The Unitarian side of the house is also weird about salvation and redemption because they were Calvinist. And so everyone who was going to heaven, God knew that at the foundations of the world, and you had no way to change anything about that. You were saved or you weren't. They interviewed you when you came to the church, and they would say, "Yep, you're saved. Nope, you're not. You can't be a member. Yeah, you thought your membership was hard. Yeah. So so that's very much a part of it. Now, some of you also know that Plymouth is Congregationalist and United Church of Christ, and that is the other side of the Unitarian house. Most of you may know. They both started out as Congregationalists in Massachusetts in the 1600s and then split over the Trinity versus Unitarian. And the Unitarian says that there's only one God and Jesus is a human being, a teacher, but not in any way holy. So you see, they too didn't have the soteriology, as we call it, right, in the Christian terms. Then humanism, we have always been secular. As I say, we were born in 1916, very much a modernist movement. And so from the very beginning, we have talked about redemption in terms of go to see a therapist, and that kind of thing.
Who are all Jewish?
You are all Jewish. Well,
It works perfectly for you. It works really well for you. So we have a Muslim therapist here.
So I'll be very happy to talk more about that. It is complicated, but that's the beginning of the story.
Oh, thanks. Thanks, David. That was great. Yeah. No, it really was good. I'm going to read you a definition of redemption because then I will break it down from there even further. God does a redeeming act for Christianity. God does a redeeming act through Jesus whereby humankind is redeemed from the evil of sin and reunited in grace with God. For the Christians in the room, that's just a beautiful, beautiful sentence there, right? Except we all understand that differently. Yes. We all understand what that act was differently, who Jesus is differently. What does sin mean? Is it an act? Is it a state of being? What does grace mean? And is grace something that really exists? I mean, these are the conversations within Christianity that have divided Christianity. The denomination from which I'm from is the Christian Church Disciples of Christ. And we were founded in 1832 on what we called U.S. soil, right? Knowing that the land definitely belonged to someone else before us. But in 1832, we became a denomination. So we did not come from Europe, even though our founders did come from Europe. and with Presbyterian backgrounds. For the Presbyterians in the house, we're an offshoot of you from way back. And we don't have any creeds. We say no creed but Christ. We have no dogma. We have no set liturgy. We don't have a catechism. If you wanted to join the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, you would just say you're joining. There's no classes. There's nothing for you to learn. That's why I guess I'm the one speaking on behalf of Christianity. Because this can mean a world of different things. I would say that most Christians would say that that redemptive act that God did was the resurrection, the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus. Although some would say that God caused Jesus to be crucified, which then brings up a whole nother conversation. Some would say that Jesus died for our sins in that, which is a whole conversation. And then there are those who believe that Jesus died because of our sins, which is a conversation that I can enter in much easier. So that redemptive act, following in the line of all the redemptive acts along the way, right, Rabbi, that God did with God's people, then for Christianity, we say that it's in Jesus and within the crucifixion and resurrection. And then from there, it's anything and everything, I would say, within Christianity with the different denominations.
Wonderful. In the name of Allah, most gracious and most merciful, I would love to greet all of you with the greeting of Islam. Assalamu alaikum. Peace be with all of you. Peace be upon all of you. It's really an honor to be with you today to talk about that wonderful concept of resumption, along with my colleague in here, whom I know, except Reverend DeWayne, only 1 year, but for the rest of them, so many years working together in order to enhance our knowledge, to exchange wonderful knowledge in the three sacred religions, the Abrahamic religion, along with humanitarian one, to learn from each other and also to reach out for you in order to say that we can do a lot together. Yes. You know, we can coordinate and cooperate and take wonderful concept of redemption in here to share with you. Briefly, 1443 years ago, that book, what we call Quran, the revelation from God Almighty, came to the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, within 23 years to teach us how that wonderful concept of resumption would be within our life, everything.
Keeps going. Here,
Keeps-
I got it. You got it? Okay. Just hold that one.
Okay, I can hold it. That's fine. I know why this one doesn't like me. Because I'm fasting. And as you can tell, everyone has a glass of water except me. I had it. They bought it for me, but I had to move it since I'm fasting. So, revelation came to the Prophet of Islam within 23 years. 13 years in Mecca, 10 years in Medina, in Arabia, in order to teach us about everything in life, whatever we need. Oh my God. All right. So they're learning from it for each and every single thing in our life, to have that resumption in order to be successful, to be happy, to relate to people, to learn as much as we can, to take care of each other, and so on and so forth. One of the 5 pillars of Islam I love to share with you is the fasting, the month of Ramadan, where we started this Friday evening, having the first day yesterday. Today is the second day, and we'll keep going for 30 days. Fasting, no food, no drink, dawn till dusk. And of course, you may ask, can you survive such a thing? Yes, we can, because we train ourselves as many days as we can, even before Ramadan. And when it comes to Ramadan, yes, we can. For those who can, or those who are able to do it. If someone is sick, of course, cannot. Or traveling, they cannot. Pregnant lady, breastfeeding, they cannot. They are exempted from this. But it was prescribed upon us, Muslims, as it was prescribed upon many nations before us, thousands and thousands of years ago, as the Quran saying, يا أيها الذين آمنوا كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. O you who believe, fasting the month of Ramadan is prescribed upon you Muslims, as it was prescribed upon many nations before you. Of course, Jewish people had it, Christian people had it, and I believe they're still having it as well as us, but at different days, different way, and so on and so forth. What was the purpose, and still is the purpose, of fasting as one of the 5 pillars of Islam? We may reach righteousness in our life. We may feel for people while we're fasting, hungry, down to dust, so many hours. Sometimes in summertime, you start at 3 o'clock in the morning till 9:30 by the Maghrib time, where we're breaking our fasting. Is God torturing us? Is God doing something for us to suffer? No, not at all. Can you imagine you're fasting like today from early morning, 5:45 in the morning, till 7:45 in the evening? How you feel when you're hungry, when you're thirsty? Do you feel for those people, especially children, all over the world? By the end of the day, they will never find a piece of bread to eat or a fresh sip of water to drink. How you feel for them? How you would be coming to help them? And in the meantime, you're having everything around you. You can hide somewhere and eat whatever you want to eat. No one would see you and come pretending that you're fasting. But it is me who is in control in order to reach that level of righteousness. In my relationship with people, how do you care about them? And in the meantime, you appreciate what God has given to you of all of those bounties around you. All kinds of food you can eat, but on a specific time of the day, no. I am in control and I can be obedient to you in order to relate to people who need my help all the time. So here with the resumption concept, I'm learning from Islam, and I'm learning from Quran, I'm learning from the teaching of God Almighty. I get to learn, I get to practice, I get to care, I have to share with people, I have to be caring and sharing all the time. Briefly to share with you this, but I still have a lot to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you. I wanted to go back to you, Lori, because you raised a lot of, I think more so in your presentation there, of all of the competing ideas.
Yes, there are many.
Competing ones, and then not only that there, and you didn't give voice to it, but I would say even a certain amount of tension in terms of atonement and what we say,
Yes.
especially that act of crucifixion and resurrection.
Absolutely.
Say some more
about
that.
Thanks, DeWayne. Say more. Well, if you think back to Anselm,
Yes.
right? 11th, 12th century, and a Catholic bishop. Was he a bishop? Catholic? He was a theologian for sure, Canterbury. And he, I would say, is probably the one who started the penal understanding of that God killed Jesus for our sins. And that has worked its way into Christianity. If you think about hymns that are in Christian hymnals, there's a lot of what we call blood hymns, right? There's a lot of hymns about the blood of Jesus. There's a lot of hymns about, God taking Jesus. It's worked its way into where it's in hymns, it's in liturgy, it's in prayers. You hear people say things like that without, I think, sometimes really thinking through what they are saying or thinking or what they've been taught. And then you have, and in that, Jesus is very, very human, but also extremely divine, I would say, in that understanding that Jesus is human and divine, human because he died, divine because he was resurrected. And there's also a lot tied with that of us being, I think, very sinful people. That comes into play a lot of times when you go down that road, right?
Right.
So then there's the tension of Jesus was crucified, and, David would say he was human and crucified. Other Christians would say that he was human and was crucified and was resurrected, but that he wasn't killed by God, that there were other choices that could have been made or other avenues that could have opened up or pathways, but that humans are the ones who crucified Jesus. And then God acted in our, if you want to say, sinful action, and resurrection happened. And then you get into the whole, was it a bodily resurrection, and what does resurrection look like? How am I doing, DeWayne? Am I going down the rabbit hole okay here?
You certainly are raising the tension, because the tension in all of that you just said has to do with what do you think the nature of sin is?
Right.
If the nature of sin is such that it is inherent in our birth, then the only way that it can be expiated is that that God must have a sacrifice of some sort.
Right.
But therein lies the tension in terms of how do you think, questions about how is that redemption effectuated? How does it actually occur? That doesn't answer that, and you can sort of fall back on. And that's where in Christianity, if you look at all of the strains and traditions and denominations, you really do start to get into that tension. And the question then is, and I'm still asking, I think I have that question for you. I'm not sure how we negotiate it.
I don't either, because it even shows up, I was thinking earlier today, in baptism. So within my tradition, we don't baptize babies. We don't do infant baptism. We do youth and adult baptism. Whenever anyone is ready to say that Jesus is the way that they want to follow, that Christianity is the tradition and the way they are going to know God, then we baptize them by immersion.
Right.
So our understanding must be that when you're born, there's goodness and you don't need to be baptized, right?
Right.
But within disciples of Christ, even within our own tradition, you can walk into a church and hear language that is very much language of that we're sinful and we need Jesus type of language. So even within a denomination that doesn't practice infant baptism, we don't even have it right.
And I want to bring David in there because David, then you jump right into that tension with.
Right. Yep. Well, I was born Pentecostal, raised Pentecostal, and remained Pentecostal until I moved away to college, where my parents couldn't tell what I was doing, and then I became a humanist, right? But we have in Pentecostalism, I would say we have the most radical. Oh, you were too. Okay,
Yeah, right.
the most radicalized. So I notice your wonderful sanctuary. Well, you're not having people come up here to bring their sins to Jesus.
That's right.
and lay them before the cross every Sunday because there's no big bar to bow down before. And if people got slain in the spirit, they would hurt themselves if they fell over. So you're a very different kind of Christian than the way we were raised.
Right.
But washed in the blood of the Lamb, which goes back to the Paschal Lamb, of course. Right. Stealing stuff from Judaism, as often happens. But after you do that, then you are redeemed. It's between you and God, and I have to respect that still, that because it's something that you as an individual can do. You and God are looking at each other, and you're saving yourself from eternal damnation. And when you come up there and say it, by golly, it's true. You are redeemed, period.
So I'm hearing, sorry to jump in on your parade here, but where I'm feeling really a bit confused is that redemption is only individual? Okay, so what's the peoplehood or the group redemption? What do you do about that?
But that's a very good question.
That's I'm Jewish. That's my thing.
Well, and that's where Christianity gets in trouble.
Maybe that's the tension.
Because Christianity, I'm not going to say Christianity, would say that the redemptive act of God with Jesus was redemption for the whole world.
Okay.
All right.
Well, at least we got more than one person.
Yes,
okay,
it is for the whole world.
Good. We're moving in the right direction.
What Christianity,
the whole world, maybe not.
What Christianity did with that is turn it into we're right and everybody else is wrong. So you've got to believe in Jesus to get it right. You may have been redeemed, but if you want to be saved, right? Now, I'm not saying that, Marcy. This is
no, it's okay. My favorite people will be with me. So that's totally cool. I'm not worried.
And it's based upon some New Testament stories where you accept Jesus, and that is your active acceptance of redemption.
Right.
That if you believe, again, we also have to be sure that we look at our own sort of context here.
Right.
We also are Christians in a Western capitalist understanding, which is even in the 19th and 20th century became very individualistic.
Yes.
And so even if there was an understanding in Christianity that that you accept Jesus Christ and it helps you, you ask for forgiveness of your sins and Jesus would forgive you, and now our context and culture really put a little bit more onto that it is your journey, it is so this peoplehood that you're talking about, that's a tension in Christianity, I think. Ecclesiology and soteriology, the church versus your salvation,
right?
That has a tension point, and I think regardless of our traditions, that's where we have to really work.
Right.
And I just want to make a clarification, and that is that Judaism is deed that leads to creed, where Christianity is creed that leads to deed. So that's why when you're talking about when you're talking about all these different tensions, I'm like, that doesn't sound like too much of a tension to me. It really doesn't seem like a big deal. Sorry, probably sacrilegious. But I remember when there was this incredible clash, 10 years ago between, evangelical Protestants and mainline Protestants. And I'm like, guys, you don't really need to break off from each other. You just need to fight it out and continue fighting. Like, that's what we do.
Yeah.
Like, you can't disown each other. It doesn't work. And they're like, oh, Marcy, you do not know what you're talking about. And so, but it's, we have movements, but in the end, no Orthodox Jew can say that I am not Jewish. No one gets to tell me that I'm not Jewish. No one. I might be, in their minds, a sinning Jew, but I'm always Jewish. So it's sort of like this difference.
Well, so then that raises the question: where are the points of tension? And I know you said you all just fight it out, but
We fight it out. Well, where it really is, there's a couple of points of tension, and I'll stick with the Messiah because I think that's of interest to maybe everybody here. So the messianic conversation in Judaism is, more liberal Jews will say it's a messianic time. The Kabbalists say we can, when God created the world, God created a vessel to put the holy essence in, because in order to make the world, God had to back away, because everything was God, but in order to make the world, you had to have space. And so God put God's essence into a vessel. And the first time there was human against another human, you could say Garden of Eden, you could say lots of different things that broke that vessel. And there are shards of that vessel everywhere throughout the world. And when we do a good deed, we put a shard back into and when the last piece of vessel gets put in, then the Messiah will come. So then, so we can bring the Messiah through our actions. So that's one way of looking at it. Another way of looking at it is we can hurry the Messiah. And that gets you pretty extreme Orthodox Jews, settlers in Israel. They are Gishon Amin, and they believe that they are the bearers of the sword and that they can bring the Messiah faster, which gets into very dangerous places in my mind. So that's a perspective. And then there's the perspective that the Messiah will come when the Messiah comes, and we just have to wait for it and see. So that's a huge tension, and where you get in this world people, who are pro-settlements in Israel, because that is around a theological understanding of redemption.
Yeah. And so, but the story still across all.
The story's still there.
The redemption remains
the same,
okay.
And it is so. Anyway, let's go to Hamdi.
Go ahead. Yes.
Let me borrow a mic.
Does it work now? It might work. Yep, it works.
It's working.
Let's see.
I'm glad.
Yep, I think
I'm glad. On the same line you're talking about, there is, which is a little unfortunate, misconception on the mind of some people saying that, well, Judaism came to the Jewish people. You believe in Judaism. Christianity is coming to Christian people. You believe in
Actually, they were first Jewish, but that's okay.
That's true.
We'll split hairs some other time.
All right. And humanism, the same thing. So
From Judaism to
Islam came to the Muslims, and that's it. No. As a matter of fact, as a Muslim, Islam would teach me that before you believe in Islam, you must believe in Judaism and Moses. It's no wonder if you check this Quran and how many pages and how many times talking about Moses and Judaism, you will be surprised. You will be shocked. The same thing when it comes to Christianity and Christian people. I have to believe in Christianity before I believe in Islam. I got to believe in Jesus Christ, peace be upon him, born miraculously to the Virgin Mary, the teaching of him, and how he approached people and so on and so forth. A lot of teaching in the Quran to teach me that. The same thing with humanism. You know, I got to understand and I got to believe in it. I got to find out what is going on. So that's why when it comes to Islam, I say, be a Jewish before being a Muslim. Be a humanistic before you're a Muslim. Be a Christian before you are a Muslim. Having all of this together, it would help you the most, not only to understand Judaism, Christianity, humanism, but how to relate to Jewish people, to Christian people, to humanistic people, to everyone around you, even some people who do not believe in anything, atheists.
Where's the tension between Muslims? Like I've heard you say that's not Islam, what these people are practicing. Where does that tension come in, Hamdi?
The tension is coming from, Rabbi, the misunderstanding of the teaching of Islam.
The understanding of the Quran.
And two, the Quran. Two, I have my interpretation of the Quran. I have, the 114 chapters. I have, the 604 pages. Let me read and look at it. Say, this verse of the Quran does not apply to me. It is my view about it. Or it used to be 1400 years ago. Now it is not applicable. Hey guys, we're in America. We're not in the Middle East. We're not in Egypt. We're not in African countries. We're in the most civilized country ever. We have, look at our democracy. Your guys, you did not have such a thing. So put this aside. Let's come up with something else, something new. No, sir. No, ma'am. Hear but read it carefully. Understand it carefully. If you can't, go to a specialist to teach you. If I do have any issue in my life, my car doesn't work, what can I do? Should I pretend I can fix my car or take it to a mechanic shop? Take it to a mechanic shop. I have something medical I have to take care of. Go to a doctor. Not any doctor. Go to a specialist in order to tell you what is going on. This is where the misconception, Rabbi, is coming from. And that huge, I would say, differences for the interpretation of the Quran and for, I am sure if some Muslim hear me today saying, I got to be a Jew before a Muslim or a Christian before a Muslim and a humanist, I say, what are you talking about? You're only a Muslim. I say, no, sir. No. So that's why when you have it this way, that wonderful concept of resumption, I can relate to all of you and no exception. I can learn from all of you and no exception. And we can get together and learn from each other and live in peace together to help people around. Thank you.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, this conversation we just had, it occurred to me that even in people who go to church, we probably won't hear, in some churches we wouldn't hear a lot about redemption, or the way it's talked about, it wouldn't,
Right.
It'll sort of have its place as a religious conversation. But it occurred to me, as someone who worked in politics for a while, in our cultural and political discourse, we are more apt to think of redemption as a moral concept than a religious one. And some people don't like to separate those two, but I do want to keep that distinction there. People can see redemption as a moral question even before they see it as a religious one. And what I mean by that is, how many times do we talk about a politician or a celebrity making up for a mistake, or he or she redeemed themselves. They paid the price, or something like that. And so I wanted to bring that down to sort of a sort of practical theological question. What does counsel to such a person? If you were counseling Will Smith,
Let's just say. Or Chris Rock. Let's put them all.
What does counsel look like to such a person in your religious perspective? But and so how does your religious tradition inform, say, someone who might not be your religion or your tradition, but how does it inform sort of a redemption as a moral act? David, I'll
Okay.
start you.
Well, first off, I do want to point out, this just hit me, I think, this morning. So, in the Pentecostal way of seeing things, that division doesn't exist.
Right, that doesn't, right.
And I think a lot of people don't understand that. Yes, Jimmy Swaggart will go, do what they do, and then they'll come back and say that Jesus saved me.
Yeah, I see.
And by which they're meaning, I'm sorry, but secular law has nothing to do with this. And a lot of us don't understand that. And if you don't grow up in the tradition, it's a little hard to see that there is no difference, because the principalities and powers, are evil. Satan rules the earth. So why do I care about the laws? I am right with Jesus. So that's a little bit, so it's a little bit different in that way.
Yes, yes.
Now, in humanism and Unitarian Universalism, I would say, because we're such a liberal end of Christianity, if we can even say we're Christian anymore, which some
Wow,
people,
that's
argue
interesting.
about. Yeah, well, but,
I would, but it's interesting that you said.
yeah. Well, but for us, I think it turns it around totally, because there is no God telling us what to do.
Exactly.
So Will Smith cannot act outside of God's will because there's no God. So Will Smith is acting outside of certain conventions. And then, because we do study white supremacy and we try to look at these things, are we merely putting a white middle class spin on what happened? Or are we understanding what happened within a context that maybe we don't understand? And so that's, I think, where we are nowadays with that. But yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Oh.
Hamdi, that same question. What would you counsel a person that needed to make amends? How does your tradition address it? But say that the person you met someone who is wrestling with making amends for something.
See, in Islam, we recognize all of these concepts around us, and we deal with politician concepts and some other ones who came up with this and that, and you name it. And we deal with it, and we cannot pretend that they are not existing. They are. But how you deal with it? In Islam, I don't have to come up with anything in my own. As long as I have this is your reference. Go back to your reference, find out how to deal with that specific issue.
What does it say about Will
I
Smith?
can tell you one difficult issue in here, and Rabbi would love it. If you're talking about the conflict in Palestine between the Jewish and the Muslims, Islam is telling me this is not a conflict between Jewish and Muslims. Jewish people believing in Judaism, like Muslim people believing in Islam, both of them are coming from one God, and we have to believe in them. But it is maybe more of a Zionist than Muslims. Where do we get this from? Again, 1400 years ago, when Muhammad, the Prophet of Islam, lived in Mecca for 13 years, killing and persecution, not many people believing in Islam, and so on and so forth. The order and command came from God to him: leave Mecca and go to Al-Madinah, 80 miles northeast of Mecca there. You can have a wonderful, safe haven there, but keep in mind, you do have some Jewish tribe living there. What you're going to do with it? Muhammad did not come up with anything in his own. No, it is in the Quran. It is in the teaching telling him that you move to Al-Madinah, you have almost half of the Quran revealed to you, but keep in mind, with that new settlement for you, have 3 foundations in order to live in peace with everyone. 1, how you relate to God Almighty and His teaching. That's it. Do not come up with anything in your own. 2nd principle, establish the concept of brotherhood and a sisterhood in that community. You are my brother, no matter what. You are my sister, no matter what. With the full meaning of it. With the full meaning of it. till the point some of the followers of Islam, when they left Mecca, the pagans, the Quraysh people, the disbelievers say, you're moving with Muhammad, yeah. You have a business in here, yeah. You have wealth, yeah. You have money, leave it. Don't take it with you. Go there. Nothing with you. When they went there, they say, here is the Ansar or the settlers of Medina. How can we live? Say, we can share with you whatever we own. Because first and foremost, we are brothers and sisters. We are human beings. God created us, no difference whatsoever. Don't look at your race. Don't look at the color of your skin. Don't look at your ethnicity, how rich or poor you are. The second foundation. The third one, which is most beautiful to me, the first constitution ever for mankind was established in Medina, according to the teaching of Islam. Muhammad, what is your relationship will be with non-Muslims who do not believe in Islam, who do not come and believe in you, especially the Jewish tribe there. Come up with this constitution according to this. I would challenge anyone in the whole world, after studying that constitution, to tell me anything similar to it. Jewish people there have their own rights from A to Z. You don't have to come to Islam. You don't have to believe in Muhammad. You don't have to believe in what God has, revealed to me. We live in peace. We take care of each other. We defend our own land we're living in. If you need help from us, we'll give you. If we need money from you, we'll ask you for it. But we live in peace together for so many years. I hope and I pray that we'll have the same thing in Palestine today. Thank you.
Hamdan, when you were saying it, I wish that especially the New Testament, that we had some general principles that stand above the context in which those writings were done, because we get hung up in Christianity, especially on the letters of Paul. We get hung up on a lot of details that actually have, in so many ways, have no relationship to the context in which we find ourselves.
Right.
And so we have modern Christians fighting over historical and contextually bound concepts that we're imposing on a 21st century world. I wanted to ask you about the Will Smith thing, that moral.
Much more important is the Middle East that you bring up, Hamdi, but we're going to still talk about Will Smith. So there's a couple of things. One is that Judaism sees that we all have a Yetzer Hara and a Yetzer HaTov. A Yetzer Hara is an evil inclination, and a Yetzer HaTov is a good inclination. Now, it's not the battle of good and bad, you have to understand, because that evil inclination makes us compete, makes us procreate, makes us do some wonderful things. Even though taken to the extreme, we can all be evil. We can all be evil in one flash of a moment.
Yes.
Now, the good inclination kept in its balance is good, but taken to its extreme, that it's mercy when there should be justice. So allowing somebody to or seeing that you have to totally be merciful to somebody who is evil, that can be very problematic for the world. So let's say Putin. Okay, so the idea here is anyone can be evil, anyone can be angelic, and actually it is not for us to be one or the other, but a balance of both. So now let's talk about Will Smith. It is not a coincidence that the head of psychoanalysis is a Jew. Because psychoanalysis helps us understand that we could all be Will Smith.
Yes, that's a good
at any point in our, and that's what I said. I mean, you come after my husband or my children, you're going to see a Marcy Zimmerman that you've never seen before. That mother bear in me is just I mean, ugly sometimes, but very intense, depending on what happens in that moment. I'm stressed. These people saw it last breakfast. I am intense. I am very severe. And so we can all be Will Smith. And that's how you approach the person who's coming to you. Understanding you could be them without any question at any time. When we judge and say, oh my gosh, what did he do? Then you start talking about, okay, so then what is atonement, right?
Yes.
And what is it that, I mean, going up and hitting somebody is, not acceptable in that moment, but we also have to help people knit themselves back into some kind of humanity. Right. And so how do you do that? Now you begin to say, okay, here it is. You have to accept responsibility for what you did. Oh my goodness, is that the hardest thing you found? People cannot do that, right? Yes, but, oh, I'm so sorry you're upset. Oh, I'm sorry you got hurt. Oh my goodness. No. Accept that you did wrong. Then you go and you ask for an apology. And you have to ask from your heart 3 times in Judaism. 3 times with an authentic apology, and if your apology is not accepted, then the sin's on the other person, not on you. And then when you're in a similar situation, you don't act the same way. Those are the 3 ways that we redeem ourselves and atone. So I guess that's a little bit of what I was.
That's great. I mean, I had never heard it described in that full extent.
Yeah, I think that it's, I think that we have gotten so into, if you really want to read a great analyst philosophy, Melanie Klein is Kleinian psychoanalytic theory. It's that we all have shame.
Yes.
We all have that part of us that's it's shame. We all have guilt. We all have the bad things that we've done. We all have the good things we do. And what she says is everyone gets a place at the table, our proverbial table. All of our parts of ourselves get a place at the table. It's just they don't get the loudest place at the table. Our shame doesn't get the loudest. We got to turn the volume down. But come on, it's okay. We can do it. We're all one. It's sort of a theological idea. We're all one. We're one human being, but we have all these different parts. It's okay. It's okay. Just calm down. And when our my bossy pants gets a little too loud, it's like, okay, calm down. It's okay. It's all right. No, that's the part of things that. So I guess that's what I would say to Will Smith. And
yeah, I just wanted to use Will Smith again.
Yeah.
Like I said, I come from the.
Yeah, I like using that.
When I would advise politicians, I just often said, first of all, just tell the full story.
Yeah.
That begins the process of.
That's right.
Of owning up to. What it is. Lori, did you want to add?
So we could go with love neighbor as self,
Yes.
right? Because that sounds good, and it's the hardest thing in the world to do. But I also think there is much of what Rabbi said, that there's some wholeness that needs to happen.
Yes.
And our denomination, our little catchphrase is that we're a movement for wholeness in a fragmented world. And so this vision that there is wholeness for everyone, that there can be wholeness for everyone. Well, if we take the Will Smith and Chris Rock example, what is going to bring wholeness for them? Yeah. What is going to bring wholeness for them individually? What's going to bring wholeness to them if there's a friendship? Truth-telling is very important, because until we tell whatever truth it is that we have, which we always know that our truth is one side, right? So you need all the truth. So it would be great to have Will and Chris sit and have a conversation. If they are Christian, then yeah, prayer is in order. having them ask forgiveness of each other, and they may not be able to give that. They may not be able to give that. I agree with Marcy. I could be Will Smith in a heartbeat, I could also be Chris Rock that says something that may not be so great, too.
That too.
Yeah.
That's right.
So,
That's right.
so it's hard, like you said, to sit there and judge. But also if they're coming and they really want wholeness or peace, forgiveness from each other, then all you can do is sit there and be a part of the conversation and let them have the conversation to work that out. But for us as Christians, I do believe that prayer and forgiveness and maybe turning our hearts a little bit more toward God come in play.
And see, just this entire conversation, again, even if informed by a religious tradition or our religious precepts in some way, what you were all getting at is the making it right, the journey toward turning in some way or healing the breach. And that actually is just we're going to get one more question because I want to open this up really quickly. But now this is where I think we get into the communal side of this whole thing, and Hamdi went a little bit in there in terms of discussing the Palestinians and Jews in the conflict there. But I also want to talk, one of the things that everybody's been talking about, you talk about it in sociology and political science, we are just so polarized. And we're even hearing from historians the inflection of what it looked like in the 10 years prior to the Civil War, that you just could not have, political sides in a room. The conversation couldn't be had. And we are really reckoning with things like racism and white supremacy. The war that is happening even in Ukraine is raising the perennial problem of how we feel about refugees, resettling people all over the world. You say this country is going to bring in refugees, and the xenophobia and the nationalism it doesn't matter what country, it just rises up. And we've been seeing that. And so I wanted to think about this concept of redemption in your tradition. And you brought it up early on too, Marcy. Where is that? How do you distinguish between personal and communal? And what does your tradition's understanding of redemption, what does it have to offer given these sort of international, national breaches that we are actually living through? And they are real breaches. That's not rhetorical. People are pulled asunder. And I've said, probably in with some conceit, that maybe it's people of faith that can lead it, but maybe I'm just being naive too. But we have this stuff about redemption that you've been talking about. And what is it if it can't lend itself to, in a constructive way, dealing with those national, international fronts? I don't know who I want to go to. Marcia, I'll go to you first.
Thanks. I think that, Judaism is so focused on peoplehood that it is not, religion is not separate than nationhood. It isn't separate than what is happening in the world. I'd like to say, if your ox scores my ox, the Talmud has something to say about that, what you do. If I find a lost animal, it's written in the Talmud. So the Torah is the written law, but the Talmud is the oral law. And so everything is about having it on the ground. What happens when you have conflict between neighbors, between nations, between all of that there is something to be said about that. Religion is not separate. We didn't have our tradition in a Western sort of linear thought that somehow thinks you can put religion outside of politics and the reality of human lives, because it's all about human lives. So I want to say that often Jews will say to me, "You're too political."
We all get that, Mark.
We get it. We all hear it.
Thank you so much. Okay, so if we pray 20,000 times a day and never say anything about the world, you'll come? No, you'll find us irrelevant is what you'll find us. So I think prayer is a part of it, but it can't be completely it. So I think that there is, what you're really saying is I'm too political because I don't agree with you. That's what that means. Right. And so, I think there is this messiness of making statements, of having conversations. I mean, let me be clear. I think there are too many letters out there that clergy have to sign. I think, God, please don't give me another letter. What does it do anyway? It doesn't do anything. Okay, you think it does as a humanist, but David, it doesn't do anything. No, I'm joking.
We do sign a lot of letters.
We sign a lot of letters. I mean, maybe if we signed fewer, they would have more impact. But I think that we have to be engaged in the messiness of the world, and we don't always know what. I mean, I think. It's hard for me to say I don't always know what's right and wrong, but I do. I know what history has said about people in the past. I know when people say, let's go backwards, that history has shown that it's not the right answer. Right. I do know that. So I don't want to be wishy-washy when I am clear about the things that are right, because God created this world. God created each of us. God doesn't make mistakes. We are who we are, and that is precious. Boy, do humans make mistakes. Yes. Right. Absolutely. And it is rooted in human mistakes, in how we treat each other and war and all of that. It's when we find ourselves in a place where we think we're God. And that is just, I think that's pretty constant from the beginning of time. And I think that's the problem. So I guess I feel like history is kind of our witness in many ways. Mm-hmm. And I want to be judged in history by the timeless values that have been with us from the beginning of time, that all of our traditions have.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
And Hamdi, again, this is relevant to what you were, I think, in the previous conversation, you were talking about the three
foundations.
The three foundations.
Yes.
And again, when I was asking that question, I was thinking about your answer. Because you said, if you follow those three foundations, I assume then all of these things that I've just talked about, if we in the Muslim tradition, if you go back to them, the breach, you have a pathway forward in healing any of those breaches around, racism or white supremacy.
See, it's really great point. For so many years during the life of the Prophet of Islam, Muhammad, in Al-Madinah, the three foundations created, if not the best, it is absolutely the best community ever. Not only for Muslims, but Muslims and other people around. Especially when it came to the point of how to defend our city. Because many other people around Arabia at that time, you name it, they never liked to hear the word of Islam. Never liked to see a prophet of Islam whose name is Muhammad. Christianity is more than enough. Judaism is more than enough. Buddhist, you name it. But to have a community living with that wonderful and a great constitution they had, it is so marvelous and so good. Yet, after the death of the Prophet of Islam, it continued for a while. But after a while, when there was some conflict, once they are away from the teaching of Islam, came down. So that's why you may ask me why it was successful with those three foundations. Those three foundations were mainly built on the 5 pillars of Islam. Mainly it is, you testify that there is no God worthy of worship except Him. That's it. And believing in all prophets and messengers. And a lot of people, when I say that, they say, you believing in Jesus? Yes, we do. You believe in Moses? Yes, we do. We believe in Abraham from Adam till Jesus, till Muhammad and anyone in between. Come to the second one, which is the prayer, where it's so amazingly, I was preaching that one 2 weeks ago. It wasn't prescribed among Muslims in Mecca till about 12 years later. Why not the 5 of them at once? And we have wonderful, work in the first pillar of Islam first. God is one. God is one. Worship Him. Do not any partner associate. 12 years. And then the prayer. Why prayer? Why we need prayer? 5 times a day. Why 5 times a day? Don't ask me that question. I do not have an answer for it. It is God designed for me, take a break from the whole world, disconnect yourself from the whole world 5 times a day with a window of time and pray. What God I do during this prayer? Here's what you can do. Face Mecca, the sacred house. DeWayne, who designed this sitting today?
Oh, okay.
You do not know.
I don't know.
I would love to thank him or her or all of them. They put me in the exact position where I am facing Mecca. All right. So when I'm performing my prayer,
Do we say that's the Holy Spirit in Christianity?
this is a blessing from God. So facing Mecca and my prayer, the sacred house, which was built miraculously not by Muhammad, not by Jesus, not by Moses, by Abraham and his son Ishmael, who was born miraculously. And part of it, to connect yourself with God Almighty 5 times a day, I really need it. Like we need a break. We need a break. I have performed it enough. You go and pray. Many moves during that prayer. One of them I'm going to mention and share with you, which is so. When I'm facing Mecca and I'm praying, I do have some moves and do. That one in particular, which I love so much. I cry in tears while I'm in that position. Go down, 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 down to earth. Have your forehead and nose touching the ground. Come back, and another time, glory to God Almighty, glory to Him, glory to you. And then I come up. Why that move? I'm asking and I'm wondering. I'm a human being. I'm not a prophet. I'm not a messenger. I was created from earth, Adam. And I will go back to earth when I die. In between, how you manage your life, how you relate to all of you, how you relate to all of you, humble yourself. Have the best of you, touching the ground there, in order to develop the best relationship ever with human beings. 5 times a day, times twice in some prayer, 3 times, and so on and so forth. Once you're done, you feel good. You feel so with that, concept of relationship to people around you. That's why no wonder when the Prophet of Islam summarized the whole religion of Islam, of course coming from the teaching of the Quran, in one word. One word, not 2, not 3, not a verse of the Quran. The whole religion of Islam. الدين المعاملة. What is your relationship with people around you? Tell me what it is. Respect, care, sharing, no matter what. Don't tell me he's a Jew. Don't tell me she's a Christian. Don't tell me this. No. Care about them, take care of them, respect them, help them, relate to all of them. And when we come to the fasting of the month of Ramadan, in order for people to know you're helping, coming to the fourth one, give from your own money. Charitable contribution to those who are in need and those who have, as I mentioned before, by the end of the day, they will never have a piece of bread to eat or a fresh of water to drink, and there are too many. Even here in America. Do you drive once in a while and you see homeless people around? How many kids by the end of the day, even here, I'm not talking about Yemen, I'm not talking about Afghanistan, or take care of them, help them, and most importantly, live in peace with them. When I follow the news, what is going on? Russia, Ukraine, for what? I prescribe the newspaper, Sun Tribune, every day. When I got it today and open it up, the main issue there say, oh, Putin and Russia are afraid of what's happening to them in Ukraine, exactly what happened to them in Afghanistan. I say, oh my God, aren't you learning?
Yeah.
Aren't you learning how much you lost there and in any other power? In any other power. Is this the way to take care of our neighbors? Can't we sit down and negotiate things? Can we find out? We're still human beings, but you have the guidance. It is not only in Islam, it is in Christianity, it is in Judaism, it is in humanism. Let's sit down, let's find out. We need to live in peace. Who's gonna pay for those who died? Who's gonna reconstruct all of these kind of things? Go back to the teaching of what God is telling you in order to have that wonderful resumption concept applied every day in each and every second of our life we're living.
Yes. Lori, I wish you would guess. That's good. That's good stuff.
Thank you.
Wow, I don't really know what to add to that. All I could think of was to dust to dust, right? I know.
Well, and again, I just even in terms of, Hamdi, again, those foundational principles, like really this whole, everything almost a priori is preparing you to respond to
Right.
any breach, any severing in the relationship. Right. And I was just thinking about, maybe we have that, but it certainly.
Well, I think it goes back to our understanding of who God is, what God is. And if we believe that what God created is good, and in agreement with the rabbi there, that we are creations, all of creation, there is goodness in creation, and that God's love is a gift and our response is gratitude. If we are created good, if I'm created good, that means Hamdi's created good, and David, and Rabbi, and DeWayne, we're all created good, then there's no place in the world for something like systemic white supremacy, right? I mean, if you just take it at the level of what God has created and we're a part of that, then I just don't even, I do know that it's there, don't get me wrong, and I do know how it got into everything that we breathe and eat, it seems like. But we should be about the work of dismantling it, because it's not of God. It's not of God in our Christian tradition, although it seems to be in the United States that it has worked its way into Christianity for sure. But it's not a part of Islam. It's not a part of Judaism. There's nothing that talks of oppressing other people in any of our traditions, right? So anything that oppresses we should be working to dismantle, and call it political if you want. I call it doing the work of God. And as a Christian, I believe it's what Jesus calls us to do.
So I think, I mean, far be it from the rabbi to bring this up, but I really, sitting with Jim Wallace at NPR and then at Plymouth, walking in Jesus's footsteps, I think is the other answer for Christians in that way. And I think that gets, he welcomed everybody, no matter what their life was, and sort of the glass houses thing, right? And so I think, for me, that when I sat with Jim, I was in awe of his faith. It is different than mine, of course. I don't see Jesus, I see Jesus as a human being. I do not see Jesus as the Messiah, or as Rabbi Shapiro used to say, maybe we don't see Jesus as the Messiah, you see a second coming. One of us is going to be surprised. I love that. What are we fighting about? When it happens, we'll know. And so I think that there is this really modeling that Jesus is for Christians. That's very profound to watch. And I went into the crypt in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, and with, at the time, Father Michael O'Connell, and he's Michael O'Connell, but not Father. And I stood in the back as he went to that place. I had been to that place many times. I go to Israel often. I go there often with groups, but I've never been in that space with someone who was Christian, a believer, and it was a very profound moment for me to be there. I was deeply touched and deeply moved in a way that I didn't know that I would be. Again, I had been there many times. I've walked through it. Okay, great, thank you. But then to stop and be there. And I think that's what interfaith dialogue is all about. That's how it defeats violence. That's how we work together. Very much, Hamdi, what you're saying. It's this idea that I think it isn't naive to say that. I think it's profound.
Yeah. Well, and I tell you though, when I tend to go to, I think the religious section in Barnes and Noble is just terrible.
It's just yes.
But I go there every time I go. I go and I look at all of the religious section, and it's always striking to me how many caveats and qualifications different Christian traditions can bring to the Sermon on the Mount.
Oh, yeah.
A sublimely written piece of work that if you take it as, and I'm not thinking in terms of utopia, but I'm thinking in terms of, look, if we all set about like this, if every Christian tradition and denomination spent the next 2 years just reading and trying to live out the Sermon on the Mount, what transformation could happen. But there are so many caveats, qualifications, and dividing out who it's for and who it's not.
What applies to me and what applies to you.
So in Christianity, we have a very well-trod and the tradition itself is going to sacred texts for the express purpose of defining out the people you already don't think belong in it.
You're proving my point. I'm going to, using it to prove my point.
I have never seen, like, if we just all go and say, okay, we go, I often used to think, like, when we go to seminary, let's just all start from scratch. Let's try and figure this out. And again, when you were saying that, Marcy, it just occurred to me, like, both you and Hamdi, you talk about different parts of your tradition, and I've been trying to pick out the points of tension, and you've shared them. But I think Christianity has made it an art where we can go to some things in the New Testament, and with the express purpose, not necessarily for finding understanding or trying to, or even just let's have a debate, but with the express purpose to caveat, define, and strike someone out. Even I saw it on the Sermon on the Mount, and it struck me like, wow, this project, and the reason I brought up the bookstore, you can see the titles. They're even now putting them in the titles of their books. You know, progressive Christians are this, or the main, it's already. David, I want to give you the last word on this so we can go to questions. Please have your questions ready.
Oh, well, one of my seminary professors said that Christianity is what you get when you mix Judaism with Greek philosophy. And I think that
There's probably some truth
it's a little
there.
more profound than you would like.
I think that's right.
Because we've been talking about this fall into individuality that actually accelerated with the Reformation, the Protestant Reformation, and has gotten worse.
Yes.
And I would say that individuality is probably the main poison of secularity, if I can say that, and we have to get away from it. I do believe that our psychology is now working in the other way because we're looking at relational ethics. We're looking at that actually our brains are way out here and they're interacting with each other all the time. And when we get there, maybe we will be a little bit better. I do carry with me, because I do believe in evolution, a thing from an anthropologist, Robert Ardrey, who said, "We are not fallen angels.
No.
We are apes rising when we rise."
Oh, I like that.
And I think, at least for me, I'm going to keep working on that one.
Yeah, that sounds good. I like that. That's definitely.
I do want to open this up, and if you're those who are watching there is a question section, please pose your questions. I can see it here. I've been equipped with that. Please, I want to thank Cody Bordeaux, who's been our production manager, who's just so very good. So I am set up to receive some questions. Are there questions here in the room? And we do have one up here too, if you get that mic working. Okay.
Is that on?
There it is.
So I'll start over here, and then I'll try to. How much time do we have, DeWayne, for questions?
We got the next 15 minutes. So if you got your questions, get up and let's go.
Yeah.
First of all, I wanted to thank all of you for being here, and we really appreciate the depth of this conversation very much. I had a question. I was raised in a Catholic church, and it was a highly structured way of approaching sin, and it involved self-examination, and then actually, Rabbi Zimmerman, what you were talking about was quite familiar in that regard. But I haven't heard kind of formalized ways of doing self-examination from the other panel members. And also, Rabbi Zimmerman, I was wondering if that is formalized in Judaism, what you described.
So let me make sure I understand what you're asking. You're asking about eternal damn.
Making amends.
Yeah, the formalized way of
The
realizing
formalized
guilt and
way
sin.
of guilt and sin.
Yeah.
Okay, I
think
thought something about after death. Was death in there at all, or what
No,
happened?
no. It's just, okay, so everybody falls short,
Right.
Yeah,
and everybody has a need
yeah.
to essentially become reconciled.
How you reconcile? Yeah.
Right, and there
Okay.
are formal,
Yeah.
there's
There's a very formal way. So leave it to the Jews to get quite formal. Again, there is a Beit Din that either you come before or two parties come before That's 3 clergy, mostly rabbis, who then listen to the complaint and then adjudicate a situation. And then the person needs to apologize the people have to apologize to each other before you go to ask for forgiveness from God. So that you have to go to, on Yom Kippur, when we ask for atonement to God, teshuva literally means to turn, which is the Hebrew word for atonement. It literally means to turn. And so you have to go. So right before Kol Nidre, which is a prayer to let go of your vows. So it was written during 12th century Spain when Jews had to convert to Christianity and in order to save their lives, but that they secretly lived as Jews. They're called the conversios. And they created this beautiful prayer called Kol Nidre, which is the central aspect of our Day of Atonement, because they're saying, please forgive me for the sins I'm going to actually make. Not only the ones that I've made, but the ones that I'm going to, because they knew they'd have to, again, live as Christians, and that they would have to continue to sin. So before we come to God to say that, we have groups of 3 who come together and ask for forgiveness from each other on that Day of Atonement so that you can come before God. So it's very formalized. I mean, there's many different avenues to ask for forgiveness and to reconcile. It isn't just required that, I come to David and apologize for something. That can happen, but sometimes it's just too hot. Sometimes it's too difficult. So of course you should go to TikTok, right? And Instagram. That's the way to do it. But we might say, I think we better go to a Beit Din and have that conversation about what has happened and have a third party, 3 people who are a third party, help us and get us to a place where we can resolve it. So there's lots of different ways to it.
And from a Christian perspective, I will say this, though. It's interesting. I think you're calling out something that I think I was just trying to say previously. We have ample evidence in the Gospels and in the book of Acts, and a few from Paul's letters about what could possibly be the makings of a more formal way of doing this. But many times those are parts of the text that we don't live out. Again, I just referenced the Sermon on the Mount. That would have been a great place,
Sure.
a foundational place to go for how to ask for, don't take your gift here until you've reconciled with your brother. Jesus was Jewish. I hazard to remind over and over. So if there's asking for reconciliation among us before you even go into the worship space. Yeah.
And yet we have that in our worship services where we pass the peace.
Yes.
And within Protestant churches, a lot of times it's at the beginning of worship where you pass the peace. In our church, we have moved it to right before communion, Eucharist, because you're supposed to reconcile, make peace before you come to the table. But it's just everybody saying peace to each other. So you're right, we have it. We don't necessarily, within our tradition, we don't have confession, right? Like you have in Catholicism, we don't have where you have a formal confession, although we should. Some traditions have a formal confession that they say at the beginning of worship or at some point in worship. Our tradition, there's never a confession.
But see, Lori, I think that also is where I have. When I grew up Pentecostal, and when I was 18 years old, the night of my high school graduation, I was on a plane and I was out of there. I was like, I don't want anything to do with it. Which is ironic, the whole story, how I got back up here as a minister. But anyway,
DeWayne.
Even the
good.
confession, though, and that's just in my Pentecostal tradition, the confession itself became transactional.
Right.
Yes.
So already now we're moving away from even reconciliation and wholeness and making amends, because the transaction was, I don't want to go to hell.
Right.
And you just told me the thing I did meant I was going to hell. So right now, all I'm doing is trying to find the insurance policy.
Yep.
Right.
And if that, so even the process of coming to a place of awareness, what did I do wrong? It isn't looking at trying to do wholeness.
No.
It's not looking at trying to be reconciled. It has become a complete transaction where I gotta get myself out of fire.
That's right.
And that changes the whole concept.
Right.
Certainly doesn't bring it into a way of thinking about your faith, or even the privilege of some examination to sort of find out where I'm falling short. And then we start getting into the psychology of it, shame and guilt and all that kind of stuff.
And I think it's, David Steindl-Rast, who I love. I don't know if he has a Jesuit monk who has gratitude.com, a gratitude. He's amazing. What he talks about is that every tradition begins with a miracle. And everybody who's been in that miracle, you see, Jesus resurrected, you see Torah from Sinai, you see Mohammed have a seminal moment. Everybody who witnesses it are there for life. They're there. They have it. It's theirs. The next generation speaks to the people who saw it. They're there. They're there.
Yes.
That third generation starts getting transactional.
Right.
Yeah.
And he says that it's like lava in a volcano. You see the lava, you see it erupt, That is the emotional, spiritual miracle. But then the rock gets hard, right? The lava gets hard. And that is the institutionalization of religion, of the miracle. And you get very transactional. And so I think the question is, where are the miracles? And I think that's why the Jewish community says, we survived Auschwitz, we survived the Shoah, we survived the Holocaust. It's a miracle. The creation of the State of Israel, whatever you might say, was another miracle. And we were witnesses of that. I mean, from a Jewish perspective, that is the understanding of it. We have a place where we will be able to go if another Holocaust happens. And so that became a miracle. And the question is, now we're third generation out from those miracles.
Right.
One, a horrible reality that turned into it. And so it's now rock to them and very transitional, and there's no new miracle. So what is the new miracle? And I think our religious traditions are trying to recreate the miracle in our worship. But I think we don't do it justice.
Right.
And I'm not sure what it's going to take to reemerge another.
Hamdi, yeah.
Thank you so much for asking this question. And I'm sure all of you are familiar with those two concepts, traditionally, culturally, or even scientifically, prevention and intervention. We deal with many things in our life differently, but we do not know which way we should go. It has got to be prevented to avoid such a thing to happening, or wait till it happens and then you would have an intervention. In the teaching of Islam, it's so wonderful. And also in my career as a psychotherapist and a counselor, what I found out that one example I wanted to share with you. When it comes to that sacred relationship, wonderful relationship, marriage, husband and wife, couple would come, say, or call, just to officiate my marriage and so on and so forth. Okay, welcome. I would know about both of them. Muslims, yes. From the same country, yes. Same culture, yes. Great, wonderful. Another couple. Where are you from? Oh, I'm from America and she's from the Middle East. Okay? No. I'm a Muslim and she's a Jew. I'm a Muslim and she's a Christian. Say, wait a minute. I can apply all the conditions and all what is required to officiate your marriage Islamically according to what Islam is saying. But one thing would be missing. I say, what? Are you willing to have a premarital counseling with me before I officiate your marriage? What is that? I'll explain to them. The least, as a husband, your responsibilities for marriage, your duties, your obligations, you as a wife. How about your finance? Both of you are working. Who's going to contribute and how much and the percentage? Are you planning to have children? I give a test for the couple. Specific questions, some of them I mentioned. Believe it or not, believe it or not. The highest of any couple would have during those 40 years I'm living here in America, the highest a couple would have, guess what, out of 10? 3. So it means they flunk the test. So now let's talk. Talk about, according to Islam, what Islam is saying. What are your responsibilities as a wife? How about you as a husband? Are you prepared to this? Are you taking care of this? How you take this? How you take finance? Who's going to contribute? How about this? If she's making more money than what you're making, who's going to contribute more? How about if you lost your job, Mr. the husband, no job at all, and it is the wife who's working, earning money, who's going to take care of this business? Most of the time the answer would be, let him go. With the D word. You know the D word? Divorce. How come he's going to support us financially? But Islam would tell you, would guide you, would help you. So you're having that preventive way, and instead of going to the intervention way, and you might never know whether it would work or not. When we have to apply for our license to drive a car, I ask them, what do you do? So, got some training, some learning. I got 2 tests in order to be able to drive. Yet, I could have an accident, I could violate, the traffic rules and regulations, and so on and so forth. If you're doing this in order to have a license to drive a car, what do you do it in order to live the rest of your life with someone and then having kids later? Islam would teach me. And I found it beautiful. I keep the record. For those who had that premarital counseling with me in our center, follow up with them, with many of them, longitudinal study. How is their life? How is their family? Taking care of the children. The rate of divorce, amazing. Amazing. As long as there is a way to follow. Yet some other people say, no. Intervention, it would help. Say, be my guest. Be my guest. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? We got a question here.
Hi,
Hi.
I've looked around before I asked this question, so if people noticed me looking around, there was a point to it. I wanted to ask, what's being done among the denominations to draw and keep young people in worship? Because I'm looking around and there are not quite so many.
Yes.
You're right.
There are a few, but
Yeah.
not so many.
Yes, good question. Who wants to take it?
Okay, I'll attempt. I think one of the things, at least I know within the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, that we have tried to do that didn't work, let me go there first, of trying to make church real hip. You know, like we're just super hip, and so all the young people are going to want to come to us. And it just doesn't work. I would say that generations definitely younger than me want to see that the church lives out what it proclaims, a church for Christianity, what we proclaim. And that means they do want to see us in the streets. They do want to see us outside of the four walls of a building. And if they come into a worship space, they want to be accepted as they are.
Yes.
And be able to say, why are you singing songs and hymns about blood, right? They want to know why is the music like it is? Why are you using language that sounds archaic? Be able to ask questions and for us to listen and learn and change. And not change just to be hip so that we can bring families in and younger generations, but listen so that they have a true voice and have a say and a stake in that community, that they have just as strong a voice as the person that's been for me as a Christian, a church for years and years and years. So that's the best I've got at the moment.
And I would just add to that, I even said this in a sermon recently. I used to, prior to COVID, 5 years prior to COVID shut everything down, I used to visit a residential treatment center in St. Paul once a month. And while the residents are all recovering from addiction, and the vast majority of them were under age 30. And the one thing that I learned by experience, here was a pastor, a clergy person coming into this space, and I think most of them came because it was the one time where they could, get out of whatever, program.
Group therapy, right?
So they would show up. But what was really enlightening about that is not what they needed to do, but what it occurred to me, there were a couple of things that occurred to me. One, our very model of church has gone out of anything meaningful to their experience.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean this, and I think the way we approach them reveals our ignorance of them and our refusal to be, we want them here, but we don't want to change anything about what we do. We want them here, but we want them here on our terms. But what I discovered is the model that we have here, they are not looking for a place to be members of. They're not looking for churches to be members of. They also are not looking for even, worship per se or to read sacred text. But what we tend to not understand is whatever they're going through, whatever they're thinking about, they are human beings. They are people with feelings. They are people with connections. They have not given up on they're not given up on trying to make meaning in their lives. And the question is, how are we going to make ourselves available in relationship to people who are looking for a way to make meaning in their lives? When I was at the 4th Precinct in 2015, Jamar Clark was killed not too far from my house, and the 4th Precinct is down the street from where I live. I went out there every day. And the one thing it occurred to me, like, these people are really into this. They're going, it's like going to church. I was thinking, like, they are faithful.
Yep.
They are faithful. They believe it. It's meaningful. And that's what occurred to me. It was a purpose, and they found meaning in it. And so my advice, even to my own church, as we've been doing, we have these task forces, we are looking at things. And the one thing I keep saying is we have got to be a reliable place for people who are trying to find a way to make meaning. I haven't said anything about what worship is. I haven't told you what we want to say to them. But how can this place be a reliable place for people to show up and say, this is what I'm into, or I'm interested in, and that happens in many ways. It happened with us putting a tent out in the parking lot during COVID and people just dropping by. It happened when we took our banner to the reproductive freedom rally. It happened when we took it to protect trans kids rally. People then looked at us and say, oh, you are reliable. Notice, we're not looking for members, we're not looking for converts, and I say reliable because every one of those people in that residential treatment center said to me, church is not safe, right. It is not a reliable place for me to go.
That's right.
I would also say that being a mother of 3 20-somethings
Yes.
and a mother of a rabbi, my daughter was just ordained. She, so that I give my sacrifice to this. So my daughter, but what she says to me often is, "Mom, Judaism will survive. It just won't look anything like what you think it should look like."
Right.
And so I guess in some ways, young people have to see themselves. You cannot be what you cannot see. Mm-hmm. And if there's a bunch of 60-year-olds up there, we do have some wisdom to give. Don't get me wrong. I mean, how many young people voted for Bernie Sanders? So, as long as you're speaking truth in authenticity in their minds, then that's good. But it also is bringing young clergy to the forefront and letting them do what they know to do the best, and young people giving leadership. And so I want to also say, in some ways, I feel like I have to accept the fact that I didn't do enough. I haven't done enough, and I feel terribly guilty about it. I feel ashamed of it at times, but I'm not going to stop myself from continuing to try and work through certain things. But that it's really going to be up to my daughter and her contemporaries, and I think that will be one of the major answers.
We have a little bit more time, but we I looked up, we've been running our mouths. We are almost out of here. Anybody else I want to hear from
We're clergy. Yeah. We're clergy.
Well, since I'm on the secular end of things, I mean, a lot of my acquaintances say, yay, the nuns, 26% of people don't go to church anymore. That's great. They're freeing themselves from,
Good for us.
Yeah.
For you.
Yeah, exactly. But, but it's not true.
Right.
I try to point out, because the inside of humanism is we have a church without any beliefs, right?
Yeah.
Basically. And getting up on Sunday morning and having a habit is good for you. Look at any medical report, any study, it's good for you to do that. Who votes? More people who go to some kind of congregation vote than don't. More people who go to congregations give more money to causes than don't. So it's good for you. The content, the belief content, is not the case. It is the relationality of the people. It is being in a congregational group. And actually, the American Humanist Association, which is the #1 secular humanist group in the country, I'm on a panel. We're trying to figure out how to create, not congregations, because atheists are not going to do that. They're not going to walk into a place with pews and stuff.
Right.
But they do want relationship, and they want some kind of congregating. And that's the future. We've got to, that's what, and that's what your daughter's going to figure out, right? That's what we're going to figure out, is how to do community of people who are committed to being and doing the right thing. Right. So that's what we got to look for.
That's exactly. Margaret Baxter, I'm so sorry. We are almost at time, and we are breaking the fast and soon, and get so that. I want to thank all of you for coming. Let's give our panel a big round of applause. You all are just amazing. I think this was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. But I also want to let you know, next week, we are still doing this. We are still joining together. So you have an opportunity. You've heard us talk about what we do, what we think about some of our sacred texts, some of our theology, some of our practices. But next Sunday at 4 p.m. at Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church, we are having an interfaith service. So this is just the first part of it. You tell everybody that you know to join us for that at 4 o'clock next Sunday at Fellowship Missionary Baptist Church, because you're going to see how we live out that in our worship space, and see how Jews, Muslims, and Christians are going to bring in this sacred season for all of us, how we bring together ourselves in an interfaith worship. You see how excited I am about it. I'm already so excited about it. So please tell your friends about it.
Bring 3 friends.
Yes, and join us for that. Thank you all for coming out.
Thank you.
I really appreciate you've been a good audience. You've been listening. I wish there were more questions, and I know they said we're clergy people, we run our mouths, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank
Give yourselves thank you very much. Have a good night. Be safe, and God bless you. Thank you all for joining us online. Sorry we didn't get to the questions, but we look forward to doing this again soon.
All right. Yeah.
Thank you, DeWayne.
Thanks, Dwayne.
Wonderful conversation, good people.
Thank you.
Oh, so good. No wonder you run